Hello students, welcome to Veda Gate Academy. In the previous session, we have completed all the different kind of losses. We have discussed about major losses and minor losses. We have arrived some standard formulas for determining hysteresis and eddy current losses, as well as we have made a discussion on copper losses. Let us try to see in this session some small questions based on the discussion of copper losses. Right. So let us try to read the question first. So what is the question? The full load copper losses and iron losses of a transformer are 3200 watts and 2400 watts respectively. Determine these losses at half of the full load. That's it. A very simple question, right? So first we will try to understand what is the data. They have given that the full load copper losses. How much they have given? The full load copper losses they have mentioned as 3200 watts, right? Now, what is our interest? Our interest is to determine these losses at half of the full load. We know that the copper losses at X fraction of full load. Already we have derived this formula, right? So, which is equal to, what is the formula? X square times full load copper losses. X square times full load copper losses. Now, my interest is, what is that X value I need to calculate at half of the full load. So, I am going to get copper losses at half of the full load is equal to X value is 1 by 2, substitute 1 by 2 whole square times full load copper losses. Okay, so full load copper losses. So you are going to get how much? 800 watts is my full copper losses at half of the full load. Right. Now what is the next thing we need to calculate? Even we need to calculate about the iron losses at the same half of the full load. So, what are the rated iron losses they have given? The rated iron losses, what they have mentioned in the given question is 2400 watts, right? Now, we need to calculate, this is my rated iron losses or full load iron losses. Now, they ask you to determine what are these iron losses at half of the full load. That means, the moment if I am saying the term half of the full load, my current becomes off. That means, there is a change in only the current parameter. But can I say my iron losses depends upon the magnitude of load current? No, right? My iron losses are constant losses, right? So they are not going to change from no load to loaded condition or from full load to 3/4 of the full load or any kind of loading conditions. It purely depends upon the supply voltage and frequency, right? So that is the reason the iron losses even at half of the full load is also is equal to same as 2400 watts. Have you understand? So this is how we need to solve the question related to copper loss. Let me move on to the next question. Right. So first read the question carefully. So here if you see a 10 kV 25 Hz single phase transformer has copper, hysteresis and eddy current losses of 1.2%, 0.5% and 0.3% of full load output power or rated output power. If the transformer is operated on 20 kV 50 Hz supply, then what will happen to these losses if current in the windings remains same? Okay, so that means there are two operating conditions in the question. First operating condition is if the transformer is operated at 10 kV 25 Hz, they observe that the copper losses is 1.2% and hysteresis losses is 0.5%, eddy current losses is 0.3% of the full load power. Right? So, whereas instead of operating at 10 kV 25 Hz, if you operate at 20 kV 50 Hz, then what will happen to these percentage losses? Because if you see the options, what are the new values they have mentioned? The new values also they have mentioned in percentages, right? Now, we will try to explore. So, first, instead of making a comment on directly the copper losses, because the first parameter here is copper losses is 1.2%, right? Right? So, let us try to focus first on hysteresis losses and eddy current losses. Later I will come back to copper losses. So what is the percentage hysteresis losses they have given in case 1? So case 1, if you try to see, they have given at 10 kV 25 Hz, at 10 kV 25 Hz, they got hysteresis loss, percentage hysteresis losses. Okay, let me erase this. So they got percentage hysteresis loss. Either you can use WH or PH, that is up to you. Okay. So, which is equal to how much? 0.5% they have given. Right. Now, they ask you to determine what are these percentage hysteresis losses at 20 kV 50 Hz. What will happen to these percentage hysteresis losses? New value. This is what we need to calculate, right? Now, whenever if you want to make a comment on hysteresis losses, always we have to see whether V by F ratio is constant in different operating conditions or not, right? So here, in the first operating condition, 10 kV by 25 Hz. Can I see, is it same as 20 kV by 50 Hz? Yes or no, right? So that means I can say that both are having same V by F ratio. So we can say V by F ratio is same in both operating conditions. V by F ratio is same in both operating conditions. As V by F ratio is same, I can say hysteresis loss is directly proportional to frequency from this discussion. Right, now relax. Now what is they have given percentage hysteresis losses, they have mentioned as 0.5 percentage, right? So the percentage hysteresis losses is equal to 0.5. How you will get percentage per unit hysteresis losses if I know percentage? If you multiply per unit quantity with 100, we will get percentage hysteresis losses, right? So if you multiply per unit quantity with 100, you will get percentage hysteresis losses. Then I can get per unit hysteresis losses by dividing this percentage value with 100%, right? So this is 0.5 percentage they have mentioned, right? So this is percentage hysteresis losses they have mentioned as 0.5 percentage, or else I will try to write. Let me erase this. Yeah. Now, so we know that the percentage hysteresis losses is equal to 0.5, and I can write the formula as per unit hysteresis losses divided by, okay, per unit hysteresis losses into 100. This is nothing but per unit hysteresis losses into 100 will give you percentage value, right? And what is the formula for per unit hysteresis losses? The per unit hysteresis losses equal to actual hysteresis losses divided by base power, divided by base power. So what is the power rating of the transformer? So the base power rating is nothing but volt ampere rating of the transformer. So volt ampere rated power. We know that per unit power is equal to actual power divided by base power. So actual power is WH actual divided by base power is nothing but we need to select from the nameplate details of the transformer, volt ampere rating, right? Now see here, as from this discussion hysteresis losses is directly proportional to frequency, right? Now let us try to calculate what are the new hysteresis losses in the second case. The new hysteresis losses divided by original hysteresis losses is equal to new frequency divided by old frequency. From here I can say that the frequency from first case to second case is increased by how many times? 2 times, right? So the frequency is increased by 2 times. So that means I can say that from here the new hysteresis losses will be equal to what you are going to get. New frequency is 50 divided by old frequency is 25 into this term. If you are taking to the left hand side, you are going to get this. So from here I can say that, okay, let me move slightly upward direction. Yeah. So from here I can say that the new hysteresis losses is 2 times that of the old hysteresis losses. So that means these are actual values or per unit values? Actual values. These formulas are applicable only for actual quantities, right? So for 2 different operating conditions, I got a conclusion that the actual hysteresis losses will be raised by 2 times compared to the original value, okay? So now I can say that this actual value for the new operating condition is increased by how many times? 2 times. Now for original condition, the volt ampere rating is 10 kV into current in the windings is remains same, okay? So 10 kV into current, corresponding current. Whereas new operating condition, can I say voltage is twice compared to the original value, okay? 20 kV is 2 times 10 that of the original 10 kV, right? Yes or no? But current is remains same. So current is same, but voltage is increased by how many times? 2 times. Voltage is increased by 2 times. So the per unit hysteresis losses is actual hysteresis losses divided by base power. Base power will be obtained from the nameplate details. In the nameplate details, okay, initially 10 kV 25 Hz. New case is 20 kV 50 Hz. But in both the cases, current will be remains same. Current will be remains same. So current is same, but voltage is increased by 2 times. So the rated power is also increased by 2 times. And this actual power losses, that means actual hysteresis losses, whether they are increasing or decreasing, will be obtained from this discussion. So from this discussion, I got a conclusion that the hysteresis losses new value will be increased by twice compared to that of original operating condition. So the numerator is increased by 2 times. Denominator is also increased by 2 times. Now, is there any change in the per unit hysteresis losses in the new case? No. So the per unit hysteresis losses will be remain same. As per unit hysteresis losses in the new case remain same, percentage hysteresis losses also will be remain same. So the percentage hysteresis losses will also remain same, and which is equal to same as 0.5 percentage. Are you following? Which is same as 0.5 percentage. So there is no change in the hysteresis losses. Now let us try to make a comment on the eddy current losses. Okay, let us make a comment on eddy current losses. Now, to make a comment on eddy current, so what is the original percentage eddy current losses they have given? The percentage eddy current losses they have mentioned in the question. If you read the question carefully, okay, yeah, so this is the question. They have given as 0.3 percentage. They have given as 0.3 percentage, right? So we know that the percentage eddy current losses is equal to, okay, the percentage eddy current losses is equal to per unit eddy current losses divided by, actual eddy current losses divided by base power, that is nothing but volt ampere rating of the transformer, into 100 percentage. That will give you percentage eddy current, right? So percentage eddy current losses means per unit eddy current losses into 100. Per unit eddy current losses is nothing but actual eddy current losses divided by base power. Are you following? Now, if I know what will happen to the actual eddy current losses and what will happen to the kVA rating of transformer from original condition to new condition, then I can able to say whether these eddy current losses will increase by how much factor. Right, relax. Now, let us try to see here. Okay, so I will try to make a comment on what will happen to the per unit eddy current losses, new per unit eddy current losses. For that, I need to understand what will happen to the new actual losses, eddy current losses, and what will happen to the new rated power. For that, if you want to make a comment on what will happen to the new eddy current losses, as V by F ratio is remains same in both operating conditions, in this case, I can say that my eddy current losses directly proportional to whom? Frequency square. And here, from original condition to the new condition, frequency is increased by how many times? 25 to 50 means frequency is increased by twice. So there is no need of writing the expressions also. As frequency is increased by 2 times, I can say frequency square will increase by how many times? 4 times. So that means I can say that my new eddy current losses will increase by how many times? 4 times. Are you following what I am saying? So now from this discussion, I can say that the new actual eddy current losses are increasing by 4 times. Now, what will happen to the kVA rating of the transformer? Already we have discussed. Current in the windings is remain same from original to new case. But what will happen to voltage? Voltage is increased by 2 times. As voltage is increasing, because it is increasing from, if you observe, 10 kV to 20 kV. So voltage is increased by twice. So I can say that the denominator is increased by twice, numerator is increased by 4 times. So overall, new per unit eddy current losses will increase by how many times? 2 times. So that means, can you tell me what is the new percentage eddy current losses we are going to get? Old value is increased by 2%. So you are going to get 0.6 percentage. So this is my new eddy current losses, whereas hysteresis losses will not change. Now let us try to make a comment on the last one, percentage copper losses. Right? So percentage copper losses means per unit copper losses into 100. Per unit quantity means actual copper losses divided by base power, volt ampere power, into 100 will give you percentage value, right? So now if you can able to calculate the new per unit copper losses is equal to actual copper losses new value. If I know what will happen to the new actual copper losses divided by what will happen to the new rated power, then I can able to understand what will happen to the new per unit copper losses, right? Now my question is, what will happen to these power losses, copper losses? copper losses, actual copper losses from original condition to new condition. Is there any change in the copper losses? There is no change in the copper losses. Why? Because previously if you see hysteresis losses actual values, new value of hysteresis losses is increased by twice, and eddy current losses are increased by 4 times because there is a change in the voltage and frequency. Okay, and we know that iron losses, hysteresis and eddy current losses depends upon voltage and frequency, but copper losses are purely depend upon the current. And in the question they mentioned that the current in the windings is remain same. As current in the windings is remain same, okay, always I can say that the new actual losses also remains same as original value. Okay, but what will happen to the voltage is increased by twice, 2 times. As voltage is increased by times, I can say that new per unit copper losses will decrease by 2 times. Okay, new per unit copper losses will be decreased by 2 times. As new per unit copper losses decreased by 2 times, new percentage copper losses also decreased by 2 times. So can you tell me what are the new percentage copper losses you are going to get? New percentage copper losses is original old value of copper losses is how much? 1.2 percentage. So obviously new percentage copper losses becomes 0.6%. Are you following? So that means my hysteresis losses remain same. Eddy current losses will be increased by twice and copper losses will be decreased by twice. So 0.6 and 0.6, 0.5, 0.6. Which option is correct? 0.6, 0.5, 0.6. Option A is correct. So this is how we need to do the analysis of per unit quantities. Okay, so somewhat it is lengthy question, but if you clearly understand how we need to approach the question, it will be very easy. Right. So once if you understand this, let me move on to the next question. Right. So this is also a very simple question, but it requires a small analysis. Right. So let us try to see this particular, read the question. In the following transformer circuit shown, if both resistors, this 4 ohm and 8 ohm resistors drawing same power, then determine the ratios of voltage across XY to YZ. Okay, that means you need to determine the ratio of voltage across XY to voltage across YZ. Right. How to approach this question? Let us try to see here. So in the following circuit, the very important point you have to understand here is both these resistors are drawing same power. With this statement only we can approach or solve this question. Right. Let us try to see here. On primary side of the terminals of transformer, how much voltage I have applied? 120 volts. Right. If I am applying 120 volts and if I am mentioning the turns ratio as 1:4, can I able to get the secondary side induced voltage? Yes or no? Because since it is ideal transformer, this voltage is same as induced voltage in the primary, and we know that the turns ratio concept, right? So the induced voltage in the secondary winding divided by primary induced voltage is equal to N2 by N1, right? So from that I can able to get, okay, so that means I can say this is my induced voltage. Am I correct or not? Okay, so that means the voltage across XZ. How to get the voltage across XZ? The voltage across XZ divided by 120 is equal to, turns ratio is 4/1. Okay, so primary induced voltage or secondary induced voltage across this entire winding voltage divided by this voltage winding is equal to 4/1, right? So from here I can able to get the voltage across XZ will be equal to 4 times 120. So you are going to get 480 volts. So I understand that the voltage across XZ is 480, right? Relax. Now what is my interest? I am interested to determine voltage across XY to voltage across YZ. That means this is my voltage across XY and this is my voltage across YZ. If I know these two voltages, simply I have to take the ratio. Or else already I know this voltage. If I can able to determine either this voltage or this voltage, then I can able to determine the other voltage and we can able to take the ratio of those two voltages. For that I can use this statement. So this 4 ohm resistor and 8 ohm resistor are drawing same power. What is the formula for power expression if I know this voltage and resistance? So the power expression is okay, voltage square. V square by R is nothing but power. So for this, the power drawn by this particular 4 ohm resistor or power consumed by this 4 ohm resistor and power consumed by 8 ohm resistor in the given data remains same. So that what is the meaning of the statement? V y z square divided by the resistance is 4 is equal to V. Okay, the voltage across 8 ohm is nothing but Vxz square divided by 8. Yes or no? So according to this statement, these two resistors are drawing same power, means V square by R for this particular resistance and this resistance will be same. So the voltage across 4 ohm resistor is Vyz square divided by 4 and voltage across 8 ohm is Vxz square divided by 8. So from here Vz square divided by 4 is equal to, what is Vxz? Already we have calculated, 480 whole square divided by 8. So from here 2 times. So Vyz becomes, if you do the simplification, you will get 480 by root 2 volts. This is Vyz. Now if I know Vyz, I can easily calculate the other unknown parameter Vxy. So plus minus plus minus. If you apply KVL, this is plus minus. So what you are going to get, I can say from network analysis, Vxz is equal to Vxy plus Vyz. And what is Vxz value? Vxz value is 480 is equal to Vxy we need to calculate plus Vyz just now we have seen or calculated 480 by root 2. So from here you are going to get Vxy, which is equal to 480 minus 480 by root 2. Right? So this is the whole Vxy value. Now what is our interest in this question? Our interest in this question is we need to take the ratio of Vxy by Vyz. Okay, so we need to calculate the ratio of Vxy divided by Vyz. So that means you have to take the ratio of 480 minus 480 if you are taking as common, root 2 minus 1 divided by root 2 divided by root 2. So you are going to get finally root 2 minus 1. So if I do the simplification, okay, let me do the simplification. Root 2 minus 1 will give you 0.414. Okay, so the ratio of these two voltages is 0.414 is the answer approximately. Have you understand? So this is one of the very simple question. So let me move on to the next one. Right. So this is a pure analysis question. Let us try to see this question. The primary winding of an ideal transformer. Okay, the primary winding. So this is 1 superscript 0 means primary winding. The primary winding of an ideal transformer consists of two identical windings in parallel. If one winding is removed, then what will happen to the magnetizing current? That we need to calculate. Whether the magnetizing current remains same or it becomes half or it becomes increases by twice or increases by 4 times, that you need to make a comment. Initially my transformer consists of two windings, identical windings which are connected in parallel. Okay, initially my transformer primary winding consists of two identical windings which are connected in parallel. Now what they have done is after that they removed one identical winding out of the two, and then what will happen to the magnetizing current? You have to make a comment. For that, let us try to draw the diagram. Right, so let us assume that, yes, this is my transformer. So this is my transformer on which I have primary winding. My concentration should be only on primary winding, right? So let me move this. Yeah. So let me move this. I don't think this much is required. Yeah. So here what I am doing is I am considering two identical windings. So let us assume that this is one winding. And I am having one more winding. The moment, if I am using the term identical windings, if I am saying this consists of n number of turns, this winding is also consist of n number of turns. Now how they are connected, these two identical windings, they are connected these windings in parallel. So you know how to do the parallel connection, right? So this terminal, what I will do is I will join here. Okay. Yeah, so I am joining this here, and after that I will try to join this wire to here. So these positive terminals will be connected over here, negative terminals will be connected, and across this we are going to give a supply. Okay, across this we are going to give a supply. Now what I will do is I will assume that the voltage applied across this one is let us assume V. Okay, V1 or whatever it may be at a supply frequency F. So here how these two identical windings are connected? They are connected in parallel. The moment if these two identical windings are connected in parallel, and if I apply across these parallel windings, if I apply a voltage of V, then can I say, since it is an ideal transformer, the amount of voltage induced across these two identical windings also V and V respectively. So that means I can say that the voltage induced across this winding is V, as well as the voltage induced across this winding is also V. Are you following? Right. Now let us assume that, okay, let us assume that in order to produce the flux, it is drawing this particular winding is drawing a current of I mu. Assume this particular winding, first identical winding is drawing a current of I mu. The moment if it is drawing a current of I mu, obviously this second winding will also draw the same amount of current since both are identical windings. So this first identical winding is drawing current I mu. Assume, this is an assumption I am saying. Okay, if it is, if I am assuming that this is drawing I mu, this second identical winding which is connected in parallel with this will also draw same I mu. So the total magnetizing current drawn by this one is how much? 2 I mu. Okay. Now because of these I mu's, let us assume that the resultant flux which is produced because of this entire phenomenon is phi 1. In this first case, this is case 1. Okay. So first we will do the analysis of this case 1. So let me slightly move upward direction. Yeah. Relax. All of you please focus here. Now here what I will do is I will try to calculate the total flux first. So the total flux is equal to total MMF divided by total reluctance, right? So here the MMF is caused because of this first winding as well as this other winding which is connected in parallel. So I am going to get MMF due to the first identical winding plus MMF due to the second identical winding which is connected in parallel with this. So what is the MMF due to this first identical winding? We know that MMF formula is MMF divided by reluctance, right? So yeah, so the formula for flux is MMF divided by reluctance. So here the same magnetic material, same length we are choosing. So the reluctance of this first MMF and second MMF will be remains same, right? So the total flux phi 1 will be equal to, what is MMF in the first winding? N into I mu divided by reluctance. And even the second identical winding is also you are going to get N into I mu divided by reluctance. So the total flux will be equal to 2 into N into I mu divided by reluctance. Yes or no? Right. Now I will try to calculate the voltage across one coil or one winding. Now if you try to calculate the voltage across one coil, can you tell me what is the voltage across one coil? V. And what is the formula for induced EMF? We know that already in transformer we have derived the EMF equation, right? So we got voltage across winding is equal to 4.44 Bm into An into F into number of turns is N, right? So this is voltage across any winding, voltage across any one winding. That is the value of V. Let us assume this is indicating with equation 1. So far what I have done is I have considered two identical windings which are connected in parallel, and I got the resultant flux expression 2 into N I mu divided by reluctance and voltage across any one coil. If I know voltage across any one coil, other voltage induced across the other coil is also same as this expression. Alright. Now in the second case what they have done is they have removed one winding. They mentioned that they removed one winding. So the moment if I am removing one winding, let us try to quickly draw the structure. Right. So if I try to see, let me minimize this. Yeah. Yeah. So now on which what I will do, now I will place only one winding. If I am removing one winding, I will get only one winding with n number of turns. Okay. So let us assume I am having only one winding. Now across this I am going to connect a source. Now I don't know how much magnetizing current it will draw. This I need to calculate, right? This I need to calculate. Now here this is my I mu, right? So obviously if I am applying this, what is the source voltage, guys? Here they didn't mention anything regarding change in the source voltage. In the previous case I have applied a voltage V. In the new case also I will apply same voltage V. The moment if I supply a same voltage V, can you tell me how much voltage will be induced across this n number of turns? Obviously same as V. And let us assume that the total flux produced by this second case is phi 2. Now let us try to calculate the value of phi 2, guys. What is the value of phi 2 you are going to get? Phi 2 mmf. mmf is n into I mu nu, that I need to calculate, divided by the reluctance will be remains same because I am choosing the same magnetic core with the same material, same dimensions. Right. Now can you calculate the voltage across this coil or in winding? If you try to calculate voltage across this coil, will be equal to 4.44 Bm into An into F into number of turns. Let us assume this is equation 2. Okay. Bm into An into F into number of turns. Are you following what I am saying? So now let us try to focus on how to calculate this phi 2 and phi. Okay. So here one point I would like to say is, in place of Bm into An, what I will do, this flux density will also changes. Bm2 this is, and this is what Bm1. So this Bm1 into An I can replace with phi 1. This Bm2 into An2 An I can replace with phi 2. Right. Now the point here, if you observe here, is the voltage induced across this winding is V. The voltage across induced after removing one winding is also V. Now from 1 and 2, can I equate these two? Okay, because left hand side parts are both are same, so I can equate both these expressions. If I equate both these expressions, what you are going to get? 4.44 phi 1 F into N is equal to, right hand side of the second equation, 4.44 phi 2 into F into N. So from here I can get a conclusion that phi 1 is equal to phi 2. So that means the amount of flux produced with two identical windings connected in parallel will be remain same as the same flux, okay, after removing one winding. Right. So what is the value of phi 1 we got from the first case? 2 into N I mu divided by reluctance. Whereas in the second case, what is the flux phi 2 got? N into I mu nu divided by reluctance. So from here, can you tell me what is the final answer you are going to get? So the new magnetizing current from here will be equal to I mu nu will be equal to how many times original value? This N will get cancelled, R will get cancelled. You are going to get 2 times magnetizing current. So what is the answer? So the answer for this one is the magnetizing current will gets doubled. Okay, will gets doubled. Have you understand? So this is how we need to do the analysis. Are you following? So initially we have connected two windings which are connected in parallel, and we got the total flux expression and voltage across one coil. And after that we have removed one winding and we have seen voltage across this coil, and we have calculated the flux, and we have equated this voltage across the coil. So we got the final expression for magnetizing current. Right. Now what I will give is, you can please pause the video after this statement and do the analysis and tell me what is the answer you are going to get. So previously in the previous case what we have done, the two windings are connected in, identical windings are connected in parallel. Now if in the above question, if the two identical windings are connected in series, and after that they removed one winding, then what will happen to the new magnetizing current? Okay, so instead of two identical windings connected in parallel, now what I have done is I have connected these two identical windings in series, and after that I have removed one winding. Then what will happen to the new magnetizing current? You please pause the video and try to please put your pen on the paper and do the analysis and try to cross verify whether you are going to get the same answer what I am going to explain. Right. So let us try to quickly focus on this. I have, let us assume this is my transformer on which I am going to place two identical windings. Let us assume this is first identical winding which consists of n number of turns. Okay, and I am having one more identical windings which also consist of same n number of turns. Okay, now how these two windings are connected, guys? They are connected in series. So this output will be, output of the first winding will be connected to input of the next winding. So they are connected in series. So and across these two terminals I am going to supply a voltage. Let us assume the supply voltage will be equal to V at a frequency F. Now the question is, if I am supplying a voltage V then how much voltage, the total voltage applied is V across two identical windings which are connected in series. Then what will happen according to the series and parallel connections? We know that voltage division for a series winding and parallel winding. Okay, if I am applying 100 volts here, how much voltage will be induced across this identical part and across this identical 50 and 50? So if I am applying a voltage V, I can say that the amount of voltage induced across this one is V by 2, and the voltage induced across this one winding is also V by 2, because they are two identical windings. Now if I am saying that the magnetizing current drawn by the first identical winding is I mu, the same I mu will also flow through this second identical winding, because they are connected in parallel. And let us assume that the total flux produced with this setup is phi1. Now we will try to calculate the total flux phi1 is equal to mmf due to this winding plus mmf due to this winding. So mmf due to the first identical winding divided by reluctance plus mmf due to the second identical winding divided by reluctance. So what is the mmf due to first identical winding? N into mmf, n into I mu divided by reluctance plus n into I mu divided by reluctance. So the total flux setup in this first configuration is equal to 2 into n I mu divided by reluctance. Okay, 2 into n I mu divided by reluctance. Now according to Faraday's law, the voltage induced across one identical part. Okay, this I will try to calculate voltage induced per winding or per identical winding. So now if you calculate voltage induced per coil according to Faraday's law of electromagnetic induction. Now can you tell me how much voltage is induced across this particular coil V by 2? And what is that formula you are going to get? 4.44 into the flux which is linking and frequency into number of turns. Right? So this is voltage per coil V by 2. So from here I can get V equal to 2 times 4.44 5 F into number of turns. Let us assume this is equation 1. We are doing the same process. Now what I will do, I will remove this particular one winding. So if I remove this winding, the diagram will be remain same as the previous one. So that means what you are going to get, if I try to see, you will have this transformer winding on which I am going to place only one winding now. So which consists of n number of turns, and I am going to supply the same voltage. There is no data as given, right? So let us assume this now this current is new magnetizing current Ni mu. Okay, and here if I am applying a voltage V, even the voltage induced across this identical winding, one winding is also V. And because of this configuration, let us assume the flux produced is phi 2. And what is the value of phi 2 you are going to get, guys? N into I mu nu, that what we need to calculate, divided by reluctance, right? And what is the voltage induced across this single winding? Formula according to Faraday's law 4.44, the resultant flux linking is phi 2 F into number of turns is N. Let us assume this is equation 2. I can say that V is same as this V. So we can equate this 1 and 2. If you equate this 1 and 2, let me try to use a different color. Okay, so if I am using 1 and 2, what you are going to get? 2 times 4.44 phi 1 into F into N is equal to 4.44 phi 2 F into N. Right, so from here what you are going to get? 2 times phi 1 is equal to phi 2. What is the value of 2 times phi 1? 2 into phi 1 is 2 n I mu divided by reluctance is equal to what is the value of phi 2? N into I mu nu divided by reluctance. So from here I am going to get the final conclusion as the new magnetizing current will be equal to how many times the original value? 4 times the original value. Okay, that means if two identical windings are initially connected in series, if I am getting some 2 amperes of magnetizing current, then if I removed one identical winding, I require 8 amperes of magnetizing current. That means 4 times the original value in order to produce the same voltages, right? So this is about the brief idea about how to do the analysis of a given magnetic circuit. So with this we are done with all the losses. So that means we are done with the 2 stages of mission analysis. Okay. So majorly we are done with the 2 stages. First stage is understanding the principle of operation of a transformer from identical case to a practical case. That means we have incorporated one by one practicality. And after that we have seen the second stage, what are the different losses. Okay, so we have arrived the exact equivalent circuit diagram and we understand what are the different losses. Now the next stage is, okay, we need to do the analysis. So that means we need to understand how to determine the parameters of exact equivalent circuit. If I know the parameters of exact equivalent circuit, then we will do the performance analysis. Okay, so first we have started with ideal transformer operation, then one by one we have incorporated one by one practicality and we understand the operation of transformer, practical transformer, and after that we derived one exact equivalent circuit diagram. And next step is we have seen what are the different losses, and after that we will try to understand how to determine the parameters of these exact equivalent circuit. Now to determine the parameters of these exact equivalent circuit, as well as in order to calculate the value of losses, we are going to perform some standard test on a transformer. Okay, so the next concept is what are the different tests that are going to be performed. So before going to start what are the different tests that are going to be performed on a given transformer, let me ask some small interview questions based on the concepts what we have done so far. Okay, so there are some PSU companies where they ask some few questions, PSU interview questions. Let us try to focus quickly on those particular things. Okay, now the first interview question is right. So what they have done is they ask a simple question: can we able to determine number of turns of HV winding and LV winding of a practical transformer? Can be able to determine of a practical or constructed transformer. That means already the construction is over. So what is the question, guys? Can we able to determine the number of turns of HV winding and LV winding of a practical or constructed transformer? This is first question. The second question is, can we able to identify the sense of winding of a practical transformer? What is the meaning of sense of winding? Sense of winding means how we have to wound the winding on a given limb. This is second one. The third interview question is, can we able to identify which is HV and which is LV winding in a given transformer? Which is LV winding and which is HV winding of a practical transformer? Okay, so now we will try to answer one by one. So these are three standard interview questions. So first, what is the interview question? Can we able to identify or determine the number of turns of HV and LV winding of a practical or constructed transformer? Practical or constructed transformer. That means what is the meaning of this one? So that means generally if you are taking a transformer, in the discussion we have simply drawn the transformer core and windings, but actually practically what will happen? First what we will do is we will wound the winding on a predefined structure. Okay, so we are going to take a predefined structure on which we are going to wound the winding according to our shape of the windings. Already we have discussed the shape of the windings and shape of the transformer core and all those stuff, right? So we are going to take a predefined structure on which we are going to wound the winding. Okay, so the windings are going to be, if you are taking practically, what will happen is windings are preformed. Okay, the windings are preformed. That means what we are going to do is we are going to take some reference structure. Let me take a simple reference structure in this fashion, on which what I will do, I am going to wound the winding according to my requirement of the number of turns. I will wound the number of, okay, so I am going to wound the winding and I will take out of this reference structure. This is called preformed. So and after that what we are going to do is we are going to tape this particular winding. So we are going to do the taping, right? So we are going to do the taping of this one. Even if you are taking a small transformer, which we are going to find in our toys, okay, kids toys, if you open the transformer, so after owning the winding, around that winding we will do the taping. Okay, so taping of the transformer. So what we are going to do, windings are preformed and then taped. We are going to do the taping, and after that it will be completely insulated. Okay, insulation is very important. Okay, so it will be, windings are preformed, then taped, and then finally insulated, completely insulated. Have you understand so far? So I am discussing about, if you are taking a practical transformer or practical construction of a transformer, we are going to take some reference structure on which winding is going to be wounded. Okay, that reference structure should be the same as the shape of the winding, and we will take that reference structure out and we will get some winding, okay, of some number of turns. And after that, around that winding we will do the taping, as well as we will provide insulation. Okay, and what I will do is, around this space we are going to insert the core. Okay, previously what I have shown is, I have taken a transformer core on which winding is placed, but actually practically what we are going to do is, first we will wound the winding and insert the transformer core. How to insert the transformer core? If you are taking a transformer core, okay, are we going to design a solid core? No, right? So we are going to design this core as a lamination, so laminated core. What is the purpose of laminations? We are going to reduce the eddy current losses with the help of laminations. So generally what we will have is, we are having core type and shell type transformer. So this core type and shell type transformer can able to obtain by using L-shaped laminated magnetic plate or I-shaped magnetic plate, okay, or U-shaped magnetic plate, L or E-shaped magnetic plate also. Okay, E-shaped magnetic plate. Are you following? So we are going to design different kind of magnetic plate shapes, and with the help of these plates we can able to get the required core type or shell type. Now if you are taking L-shaped lamination, then what I am doing, I am going, let us assume I want to build a core type transformer. What I will do is, I am going to take, this is one L-shaped magnetic plate, on which what I will do is, I am going to place one more L-shaped magnetic plate in this fashion. Yeah, I am weak in drawing the diagrams, please bear with me. Yes, this is under L-shaped magnetic plate. So the resultant, if you see the shape, I am going to get as what? I am going to get the required core type transformer. Yes or no? Right? So we are not going to use only two magnetic plates. We are having a bunch of magnetic plates. That means above this, again I am going to place one more L-shaped magnetic plate. Okay, I am going to place one more L-shaped magnetic plate like this. Let us assume. So I am going to use one more L-shaped magnetic plate in this form. Similarly, I am going to use one more magnetic plate here. I am going to use one more magnetic plate, right? So this is the way we are going to design the laminated core. So we are going to take a different magnetic plates of different thicknesses or thickness of laminations according to our requirement, and those similar thickness of laminations of shapes we are going to bunch together to get the required shape. Okay, and in between each and every lamination, don't forget that we are going to provide insulation. Now here what we are going to do is this joint and this joint, okay, so this particular black and red color will be joined by using butt joints. We are going to use butt joints. So I think you heard this name while studying in your P-Tech also. So the butt joints, I will tell you what is the purpose of these butt joints here, here as well as here. We are going to provide the butt joints at these places. So the purpose of these butt joints is in order to tightly riveted these laminations. What will happen? We will see later. What will happen if I am not tightly riveting? So I will give one statement. What will happen if not if these laminations are not tightly bunched? So the purpose of boot joints is, in order to tightly riveted these laminations, we are going to use boot joints. Not only that purpose, okay, the other purpose of boot joints is in order to reduce the overall reluctance for the flow of flux. That means here, if you try to see, let us assume that the flux is generated here. Okay, so the flux will complete the path in this fashion. Yes or no? So it will complete the path. So the moment if I am having a small air gap, okay, already we have discussed, by introducing a small air gap, the overall reluctance offered for the flow of flux increases to a very large value. So obviously we require a high amount of magnetizing current to produce the required flux. So if I can able to reduce the overall reluctance offered for the flow of flux, then with the small amount of magnetizing current, I can able to produce the required flux. Are you following? Right? So that is the reason, with the help of boot joints, I can able to create the low reluctance path for the flow of flux. Okay, so this boot joint, okay, because of the presence of boot joint, the overall reluctance offered for the flow of flux will be reduces. So I can, because as I am tightly riveting, automatically there should not be any air gap. Okay, so in general, always we have to design the transformer with minimum air gap or without air gap in the transformer core. So that is the reason. What are the two purposes of boot joints? In order to tightly riveted the laminations or tightly bunch the laminations, we are going to use boot joints, as well as in order to reduce the overall reluctance for the flow of flux, we are going to use these boot joints. Now what I will do is, this is the structure, right? So here, after preformed this winding, around this winding I will place one L shape, okay, and in this side L shape. Likewise, totally I am going to get around this winding. Okay, if you imagine, you will get over here. Okay, I am going to place L-shaped magnetic plates around this. Similarly, one more winding, L-shaped magnetic plates in this. So I am going to get the final structure in this fashion. It is very easy for us to insert a straight L-shaped magnetic plate, right? Are you following what I am saying? This is L-shaped straight, and anyway this one comes. So this is the practical way of designing windings as well as transformer core, right? Now why I am discussing this one is in order to understand are we able to determine the number of turns of HV winding or LV winding? Now, generally in examples or problems while discussing, they mention a 10 kVA, 1000 volts by 100 volts. Okay, they mention 1000 volts by 100 volts. So from that we came to know that the HV winding is 1000 volts and LV winding is 100 volts. From that I will get the turns ratio, but I cannot able to say the number of turns of HV and LV winding, right? Because if you are taking after wounding this winding on this core, or after getting a entire transformer, what we are doing, we are going to conceal this entire thing with a transformer tank. So here, in fact, if you see here, the windings are preformed and then taped and insulated completely, right? So I cannot able to visualize how many tons are wounded for HV and how many tons are wounded for LV winding. So once if the construction of the transformer is over, I cannot physically visualize the number of tons which are available for HV and LV winding. So since even though if I am removing the transformer tank, by seeing that I cannot able to say how many windings are wounded for HV and LV, because they are preformed, taped and completely insulated. Okay, so the answer for the first question is, can we able to determine the number of turns of HV and LV winding of a practical transformer? No. Or constructed transformer? No. Answer is no. Have you understand this point? Because my winding is completely preformed as well as taped and insulated, and they are going to insert in this particular transformer core, and around this transformer core we are concealed entire these things with the transformer tank. Even if you are removing transformer tank, so you are not going to identify the exact number of turns. Let me come back to the second question. Can we able to identify the sense of the winding? Already we are done with the discussion. Since it is a preformed and taped, I cannot able to say whether the winding is wounded in this fashion or the winding is wounded, let me take in this fashion. Okay, so I cannot able to identify the sense of the winding. Sense of the winding means how they are going to wound the winding. So the answer for this one is also no. Now the last one is, can we able to identify which is LV winding and which is HV winding? Can we able to answer this? If I am giving a constructed transformer to you, by seeing that constructed transformer, or if you go to the adjacent road, on the roads you will have a transformer, right? So by seeing that, can we able to say which is HV and which is LV winding? Yes, we can able to say which is HV and which is LV winding. How can we say which is HV and which is LV? Let us try to focus on that. Right. So if I want to say my winding is HV or LV winding, let us try to see it. For suppose I am going to draw a simple diagram. This is my transformer core, and this is my one winding, consists of some n number of turns, and this is my other winding. Right. Now this entire transformer, as I said, it will be concealed with what? Transformer tank. So let us assume this is my transformer tank. Okay, as I said, please bear with me. So let us assume this is my base of the transformer. Yes. Okay, to get a feel, I am going to draw in this fashion. Yeah, so this is my transformer tank. What is the general purpose of transformer tank? Their first purpose is it will act as a mechanical protection for all the metallic parts which are presented inside the transformer. The second purpose is it acts as a coolant. That means whatever the heat which is produced inside the transformer, my transformer tank will try to absorb and it will dissipate to the outside world. Okay, so the transformer tank will provide mechanical protection for all the parts inside the transformer, as well as it will absorb the heat which is generated, okay, which is generated inside the transformer, and it will dissipate out to the outside environment or world. Okay, so that means as it is absorbing the heat, so it should have good thermal conductivity property, right? So the transformer tank should have good thermal conductivity. It should have good thermal conductivity. So the moment if it is having good thermal conductivity, even it also a good conductor, good electrical conductor also, good electrical conductor, right? So now if you understand this point, now here can I say these are my input terminals of the transformer, assume these are my output terminals of the transformer. These input terminals will be connected to the source, right? So I will take this wire out of this transformer tank and will be connected to the source. So similarly, let me not draw this, only these terminals I will draw. These are my output terminals which are going to be connected to home load, right? Now can I say this winding is also a conductor? Yes, this winding is a conductor. This is my winding, guys. So this is my conductor, and transformer tank is also acting as a conductor, but both are at different potentials. So the two different potentials, okay, this winding and transformer tank are having at different potentials. Can I directly join those two? No. So in between these transformer tank as well as the winding, we need to provide the insulating material. Okay, are you following what I am saying? So I need to provide the insulating material because both these two are windings and both these two are conductors which are at different potentials. So that is the reason what I will do. I am going to provide insulation. Let me draw some insulation with a different color. So this is, I can say, the insulation. This is, I can say, the insulation, right? And from these things I can take the wires and I can able to connect it to the either source or to the load, right? So these insulators, okay, what is the purpose of these insulators? In order to isolate this winding and transformer tank, right? Now my question is, can I say the insulating capacity or size of the insulating material depends upon whom? The size of the insulating material depends upon the potential difference or impressed voltage. Yes or no? Right? For suppose if I am assuming that this particular winding is a LV winding and this particular winding is HV winding, then obviously the potential difference between this LV winding and transformer tank will be less compared to HV winding and transformer tank. So as potential difference is less, this insulating size of the insulating material obviously should be less, or capacity of the insulating material should be less compared to this insulating material. Are you following? So the point you need to understand here is I cannot able to visualize this transformer core, or I cannot able to visualize this sense of the winding or number of turns of the winding, but I can able to physically visualize these insulators. Okay, these insulators in transformer terminology we can call it as bushings. We can call it as bushings. This is one bushing and this is another bushing. We can call it as bushings, right? So the point you need to understand here is the winding, the LV winding bushing length will be less or more compared to HV winding bushing length. Obviously, since it is a LV winding, if I am assuming if it is a LV winding, the length of this bushing will be small, whereas the length of this bushing will be more. Okay, so the conclusion what I would like to say from this discussion is, I can able to say which is HV and which is LV by seeing the installed transformer outside, by seeing the bushing lengths. For LV winding, the bushing length or size will be less, whereas for HV winding, the bushing length or size will be more, because this is insulator. Bushings are nothing but insulators. So these insulator rating or capacity or size will be decided based on the impressed voltage, as we have discussed. So as for LV winding, impressed voltage will be less, so you can use less length or size of the bushing, whereas for HV winding it will be more. Of course, even by seeing the area of cross section of the conductors also, we can able to say which is LV and which is HV winding. So these are the three important interview questions which you need to understand. So the conclusions are, can we able to identify the number of turns of HV and LV winding of after installation of the transformer or construction of the transformer? No, because my transformer windings are completely preformed, taped and insulated before they are going to wound on the transformer core. So that is the reason I cannot able to identify the number of turns as well as the sense of the winding. But I can able to say by seeing a physical transformer or installed transformer or constructed transformer, I can able to say which is HV as well as which is LV winding by seeing the size of the bushes. Okay, so this is about the brief idea about the interview. Now let me ask one more interview question, right? So that is that question. Let me ask a very simple question. Why noise will come from transformer? What are the reasons behind the noise from the transformer? Generally, if you go adjacent to the transformers, okay, during the night time, midnight, after second show, if you are going adjacent to the transformers, you will find a small noise, humming sound, okay, zzz kind of sound you are going to identify from the transformer, some of the transformers, right? So now the question is, what is the reason behind why we are getting this noise or humming sound from the transformer? Okay, so this I can also say humming. Why noise or humming will come from the transformer? What are the reasons? Let us try to answer this particular statement. So the reason behind why we are getting noise or humming from the transformer is, the major reason behind this one is magnetostriction. Magnetostriction phenomenon. The major reason behind the production or occurrence of humming or noise from the transformer is magnetostriction phenomenon. Okay, so generally what is the meaning of magnetostriction? So I will explain with a simple example. For suppose if you are taking a wood, okay, our doors, whatever the doors in our household, main doors or whatever it may be, that main doors are generally designed with a plywood, right? So if you are taking that plywood, okay, this plywood will have a chance of they may expand or they may compress, but you cannot able to visualize a much difference. Okay, generally they can get expanded or compressed during different seasons. Okay, during rainy season or winter season or summer season, the wood can able to have a capacity or the property of this wood in such a way that they may expand or compress with a small little changes in the dimensions. Okay, during different seasons. The same thing even happened for magnetic materials also. Okay, so the magnetic materials will also have a property that they will change the dimensions. Okay, they will change the dimensions, and those dimensions will not will have a more variations. They are having very small variations. Okay, so that phenomenon we can call it as magnetostriction. I will tell you the definition now. So the definition of magnetostriction is, it is the property of a magnetic material in which changes in dimensions will take in place because of alternating nature of magnetization process. Because of alternating nature of magnetization process. Already we have seen how to draw the BH loop. Have you remembered that BH loop, right? So what we have done is we have taken a magnetic core and we consider the small portion of this magnetic core, and if you enlarge this small portion, okay, this is act as a magnet. And if I cut this magnet into a smallest pieces, again this smallest piece will also act as a magnet, and the smallest piece of a magnet which is capable of producing 1 unit of flux is called dipole. Already we have seen this discussion, right? Right. So the dipole is a smallest piece of a magnet which is used to produce 1 unit of flux. And if you are taking this portion, it consists of n number of dipoles, right? So for suppose if you take a small portion of this magnetic material, and we have seen that if you consider this small portion of the magnetic material, all the dipoles are oriented irregularly. All the dipoles are oriented irregularly. Okay, right? So that is the reason what will happen, all these dipoles, if one dipole is aligned in this fashion, there is one more dipole somewhere in this magnetic core material which should be in the opposite direction. So this dipole, if you observe, this is opposite to this, this is opposite to this, this is opposite to this. So everything will get cancelled and the net flux is equal to 0. That is called completely unexcited state of the magnet, right? So the resultant flux or net flux produced by this particular material, magnetic material, is 0. Are you following what I am saying? Now what I have done, we have explained in such a way that, okay, we have explained in such a way that we have taken one alternating magnetizing current. So the MMF is also alternating in nature. So this is undergoing magnetization process, demagnetization, again magnetization in the reverse direction, demagnetization in the reverse direction. Again in 5th quarter cycle, you are going to get the same process will be repeated. This is what we have discussed right now. Okay, so during magnetization process, that means in the first quarter cycle, what will happen is all these dipoles will start align uniformly, right? So let me, yes. So during first quarter cycle, what will happen? Already we have seen the discussion. If you are didn't remember, you can go through the previous session video where we have discussed these BH loop or iron losses. Okay, right? So now, since all these dipoles are aligned non-uniformly, so the resultant flux produced is 0. Now the moment if this I mu starts flowing through this wire, okay, what we will do around this, we are going to wound the winding having some number of turns and we will pass some magnetizing current. So it will produce MMF, magnetomotive force. What is the purpose of magnetomotive force? It will try to align these dipoles uniformly in one direction, right? Now let us assume that this is the instant where all the dipoles are aligned uniformly. So let us assume all these dipoles are aligned uniformly. The moment if all these dipoles are aligned uniformly, then for suppose in the initial case, if I am assuming that the total length occupied by these 6 dipoles which are non-uniformly aligned is L. Now the moment if all these 6 dipoles are aligned uniformly, can I say will I get the same length occupied in the previous case? No. Because for suppose if you are taking our classroom, okay, I have 2 benches in my classroom. Let us assume this is bench 1 and this is bench 2 which are facing towards the faculty, right? And I can able to accommodate, let us assume 4 students in a bench. I can able to accommodate 4 students in a bench if they properly sit towards the faculty face. Okay, they properly sit towards the faculty face in a straight direction. I can able to accommodate 4 students. But for suppose if one student is facing towards north direction, another student is facing south direction, other student is facing opposite to the face of the faculty, then can I able to accommodate all the 4 students in a single bench? No, right? Are you following? I cannot able to properly accommodate all these things. So the point you need to understand here is, here I can able to accommodate 4 students, but if they are not properly sit, obviously the space requirement, bench size should be increased. So the same thing is applicable here also. If these dipoles are not uniformly aligned, if I require L length, then if all the dipoles are aligned uniformly, I does not require the same L length. So I require a small length compared to this one. Okay, so the length will be decreased by a small value compared to the original. So you cannot able to observe these deviations actually. Okay, so I can say the length requirement is L minus delta L. Okay, again this is first quarter cycle. In the second quarter cycle, again it will come back to their original positions after this time, and again during third quarter cycle, now they will align in the opposite direction. Okay, they will change the orientation of the dipoles in opposite direction. This is my orientation of the dipoles in the third quarter cycle. You can go through the video what we have seen. Again in this case also, the dimensions that are required will be decreased by a small value compared to the non-orientation of the dipoles. So that means what will happen? There is a changes in the dimensions is taken place because of this alternating nature of magnetization process. That phenomenon we can call it as magnetostriction. So what is the definition of magnetostriction? It is the property of a magnetic material in which changes in dimensions takes place because of alternating nature of magnetization process, is called as magnetostriction. Now what will happen if this phenomenon is happening, right? So the moment if this magnetostriction is happening, then what will happen? So here what will happen here, if I am giving a frequency of supply as 50 Hz, okay, frequency of supply as 50 Hz, then can you tell me what will happen if see here, generally these dimensions of what these dipoles are changing, right, or dimensions of magnetic material is changing. So that means, can I say the dimensions of the plates, okay, or magnetic plates or laminating plates is slightly changing? As dimensions of the magnetic plates is slightly changing, that means, for suppose if I am taking, okay, these two solid objects, okay, if these two solid objects are hitting, then you are going to get some noise, right? Because if these two solid objects are hitting, then so these solid objects starts vibrating. These vibrations will okay, travel in the air, and if they comes under the audible range, then we can able to hear some sound, right? So the other point is, apart from this magnetostriction, the other reason behind the occurrence of noise is laminations, poor core staggering, I can say. Poor core staggering. What is the meaning of poor core staggering? So as I said, discussed here, okay, so the laminations are, what we are going to do, we need to tightly rivet it, tightly bunch the laminations, okay. If I am not tightly bunch the laminations, then what will happen is, okay, so because of this magnetostriction, because of the changes in the dimensions takes place, okay, so there is a mechanical stresses between magnetic plates will increases. So the moment if these mechanical stresses between magnetic plates increases, then obviously what will happen, these two magnetic plates will hit, and magnetic plate starts vibrating. Because of these vibrations of the magnetic plates, if these vibrations travel in the air and if they falls under audible range, so what is the audible range? Generally it will be 20 Hz to 20 kilohertz. If this whatever these vibrations falls under the audible range, then we can able to get noise or humming from the transformer. So the two reasons behind the occurrence of noise or humming is, one is magnetostriction and second one is poor core staggering. What is the meaning of poor core staggering? If these laminations or magnetic plates are not tightly riveted, that process we can call it as poor core staggering. That is the reason always what we have to do, we need to use the boot joints or somewhere, okay, some other else, in such a way that all these magnetic plates are tightly bunched together, tightly riveted together, tightly staggered together, okay. So if all these laminations are tightly bunched or staggered, then we cannot say it is poor core staggering. In that case, you won't get vibrations and you won't get any noise from the transformer, okay. So the two major reasons, or major reason behind the occurrence of noise is magnetostriction. What is the definition of magnetostriction? It is a property of magnetic material in which changes in dimensions takes place whenever if alternating nature of magnetization process is applied. And poor core staggering means the laminations are not tightly bunched, and because of that what will happen, you are going to get humming or noise from the transformer, okay. So if I am giving a frequency as 50 Hz, then can you tell me what is the frequency of humming or noise you are going to get? The frequency or humming. So when dimensions are taken place, for every off cycle there is a change in the dimension place, L minus delta L to L, again L to L minus delta L is taken place. So that means for every off cycle, already I told to you, for how many off cycles or quarter cycles, the change in the orientation takes place, the change in the dipole orientation is taken place for every off cycle. Go through that video, okay. So that means for every off cycle, the changes in the dimensions also taken place from L to L minus delta L to L minus delta L, well, off cycle. So the frequency of humming is always twice that of the supply frequency. So that means you are going to get 100 Hz. The frequency of the humming becomes 100 Hz. So this 100 Hz, obviously if you are taking a power frequency, always the power frequency is 50 Hz. So the frequency of humming is around 100 Hz. It is falls under audible range. So obviously we are going to get humming or noise from the transformer. So the conclusion is, why noise will come in a given transformer? The reason behind the occurrence of noise is magnetostriction as well as poor core staggering. Okay, so this is about the brief idea about the interview questions. So with this we are done with the different losses as well as how to determine those losses. We have seen the examples of how to determine iron losses, hysteresis and eddy current losses as well as copper losses. So the next discussion is how to determine the parameters of equivalent circuit and how to estimate these losses with the help of some standard tests that are performed on a given transformer. So before going to start the discussion of tests on a transformer, let us understand one small concept. Okay, so that is why nameplate details of transformer is mentioned with volt ampere rating. If you observe the nameplate details of a transformer, in general on the nameplate details, whatever the power rating they mention as volt ampere power. Okay, so why nameplate detail of a transformer is mentioned with volt ampere power? Volt ampere power is nothing but simply we can call it as apparent power. Okay, apparent power. So why always on the nameplate details they are going to mention the power rating as a apparent power? Why can't we mention the power rating as a active power? Okay, why we are not mentioning as active power? That means if you are taking a simple transformer, always we are saying some 10 kVA 1000 volts by 100 volts. The 10 kVA volt ampere is nothing but apparent power. Why we are not mentioning 10 kilowatts? 10 kilowatts 100 volts by some 1000 volts transformer. The reason, let us try to analyze the reason why we are mentioning the rating of the transformer is in apparent power. So generally the power rating of any transformer or any machine will be decided based on the temperature rise of that machine. Okay, generally the power rating of any transformer or the rating of any transformer, the power rating of any transformer will be decided based on the temperature rise of that particular machine. Generally inside the transformer you will have metallic parts, right? And each metallic part, all the metallic parts will have its own melting point. Okay, that means if the temperature rise within the transformer is more than this melting point, then the transformer gets damaged, right? So always okay, we have to design the transformer or the rating of the transformer is in such a way that it should be withstand the maximum temperature capacity, or it should be less than the maximum temperature withstanding capacity of those all the metallic parts. Okay, so the point is the power rating of any transformer will be decided based on the temperature rise, and all the metallic parts which are presented inside the transformer will have some melting point, and if the temperature is rise is more than this melting point, the transformer gets damaged. So that is the reason we have to design the transformer in such a way that the rating of the transformer should be, or the temperature rise of the transformer should be less than the maximum withstanding capacity. Okay, maximum withstanding capacity. Are you following? So now the point is, as I said, the power rating of a transformer is decided based on the temperature rise. Okay, decided based on the temperature rise, and this temperature rise inside the transformer is occurred because of whom? Why temperature rise will taken place or heat will be taken place inside the transformer? Because of losses, power losses that are occurred inside the transformer. Now if you consider what are the major losses that are occurred inside the transformer, the major losses that are occurred inside the transformer is, one is iron losses and second one is copper losses. And we know that the iron losses depends upon whom? The iron losses depends upon voltage and frequency. The iron losses depends on voltage and frequency. Whereas my copper losses depends upon whom? The copper losses majorly depends upon current. That means if you observe clearly here, I can say that the total losses, whatever the losses which are presented inside the transformer or occurred inside the transformer are, okay, because of voltage and current at a given frequency. So if you clearly observe here, can I say my total losses depends upon the voltage and current, or are they depends upon power factor also? No, right? They are not depend upon power factor. So my total losses are purely depends upon voltage and current and independent on the power factor. So as total losses are independent on power factor, the temperature rise is inside the machine is also independent on the power factor. So the temperature rise inside the transformer is purely depends upon the voltage and current. Okay, voltage and current. So that is the reason as temperature rise inside the transformer is depends upon purely voltage and current. We can say that the power rating of the transformer as it depends upon temperature rise is also purely depends upon voltage and current and which is independent on the power factor. So that is the reason always the power rating of the transformer is as it is directly proportional to the temperature rise inside the transformer, and this temperature rise depends upon the voltage and current, okay, voltage and current, but independent on power factor, or but not depend on whom? Depend on power factor. So this voltage and current means volt ampere power. So always the power rating of the transformer is indicated as volt ampere power. That means we are going to indicate with apparent power. Have you understand? So the conclusion is why we are going to mention the transformer rating as a apparent power rather than active power. The reason is the power rating of any machine, not only transformer, is decided based on the temperature rise inside that machine or temperature rise inside the transformer. The temperature rise inside the transformer depends upon the different losses that are occurred. And we are having in transformer we are having iron and copper losses, and iron losses depends upon voltage, copper losses depends upon current, total losses depends upon volt ampere or voltage and current. So that is the reason temperature rise inside the machine is also depends upon voltage and current, right? So the as temperature rise depends upon voltage and current and independent on power factor. So we can say even the power rating also indicated with volt ampere. I think you have understand this particular point. For suppose if I am indicating the transformer rating as active power, what will happen? Let us assume I am a designer, a transformer designer. So I have designed a transformer. Let us assume this is my transformer. Okay. The capacity of this transformer is, let us assume the maximum capacity of this transformer, okay, that means insulating material, winding, everything I have taken into consideration in such a way that my requirement of design of this transformer is maximum voltage is 100 volts, maximum current is some 100 amperes. Okay. So what is the meaning of the maximum voltage is 100 and maximum current is 100 amperes? If I apply a voltage above this 1000 volts, then what will happen? If I apply a voltage above 1000 volts for this design transformer, then what will happen? Iron losses becomes excessive. Okay, so I will simply write Wi. Iron losses is excessive, more than the required value. As iron losses becomes more, what will happen to the corresponding core? The core gets overheated. Okay, so because the power losses are increasing, as power losses are increasing more than the maximum capacity, I can say the core starts, okay, core increases more value. Okay, so core gets overheated. Yes, so this is first point. Next point is, for suppose if I am applying a current which is more than 100 amperes, okay, if the current becomes more than 100 amperes, in that case which losses becomes excessive? I can say that my copper losses is excessive. As copper losses is excessive, I can say that which is going to be overheated. We can say that windings gets overheated. Windings gets overheated. So this is the meaning of the maximum capacity. Are you following? So the maximum voltage is 100 volts and maximum current is 100 amperes. Now, while designing this transformer, I have to indicate on the nameplate details the power rating. In order to indicate the power rating, what I have done is, as I am not good in how to indicate the power rating on the nameplate details of my transformer, what I have done is, during the design stage, my requirement is 100 volts and 100 amperes. This transformer having a maximum capacity of 100 volts and 100 amperes to some particular load, and I have calculated the power. So let us assume I have connected during my design stage, I have connected a pure resistive load. Okay, and I am trying to utilize the load with a capacity of maximum capacity as mentioned in the transformer. So that means I require a voltage of 100 volts. Okay, and it will draw maximum capacity of the transformer 100 amperes. Right? So now for this particular thing, if I try to calculate the power, active power and apparent power, we'll see what will happen. So for this load, can you tell me what is the active power? What is the formula for active power? VI cos phi. And for pure resistive load, what is the power factor? For pure resistive load, the power factor is 1. Right? So from here, what is the active power you are going to get? 1000 volts into 100 amperes. So I am going to get 100 kilowatts is the active power. And what is the apparent power you are going to get? The apparent power is volt ampere. So 1000 volts into 100 amperes, you are going to get 100 kilovolt amperes kVA. So for this particular load, during the design stage, I have connected a pure resistive load, and I can understand that the maximum capacity of the load, if I am utilizing this transformer at a maximum capacity, the active power is 100 kilowatts and apparent power is 100 kVA. Now what I have done is, for this 100 volts and 100 amperes, I have designed the insulation material, winding, okay, winding area of cross section, length of the cross section, everything I have kept in mind, and I have designed a practical transformer. Okay, I have constructed it, and on the nameplate details, now what I have done is, as a designer, I have indicated rather than 100 kVA, I have indicated 100 kilowatts. Okay, what I have done, now I have released the transformer which I have designed. Okay, I have released the transformer which I have designed into the market by mentioning the rating of the transformer as 100 kilowatts active power compared to the reactive power. Okay, on the nameplate I have mentioned as 100 kilowatts. So now let us assume you have purchased this transformer and you have seen the nameplate details of the transformer. On the nameplate details, they mention as 100 kilowatts. Okay, the power they have mentioned as 100 kilowatts. Now as a user, for suppose now I am a user, okay, I am not a designer, okay, so forget about that. So I am a user. Now I have seen this transformer, I understand that the name on the nameplate details, the power rating is 100 kilowatts. So what I will do, I can able to keep in mind that I can able to connect a load with a capacity of how much? 100 kilowatts, which is can able to bear a capacity of 100 kilowatts, right? What I have done is I have purchased this transformer, and after that for this transformer I have connected a load. Let us assume I have connected a induction motor. Okay, so motor is nothing but it requires input electrical and output is mechanical. So this input electrical energy is supplied by this transformer. Let us assume that this transformer terminals, what I have done is I have connected to a induction motor. Let us assume this is my induction motor. So as I said, the moment if I am saying the induction motor is nothing but it is a combination of RL load. I can say it is a combination of RL load, right? So this induction motor capacity I will keep, because my transformer maximum capacity is 100 kilowatts. I can say the capacity, maximum capacity of this induction motor also I will keep in mind that 100 kilowatts. At a voltage of how much? Because the voltage rating they will mention, they won't mention the current rating, right? So they will mention voltage ratings. Okay, if you see the nameplate details, in general, okay, if I am a good designer, on the nameplate what I will mention 100 kVA, some 1000 volts by 200 volts, right? But instead of kVA, what I have done, I have mentioned 100 kilowatts and voltage rating. You won't get this current rating. This is inside, okay? As a designer, I know this. As a designer, I know this. But as a customer, you don't know this, right? So, right. Now, here, this is my RL load. I know that the voltage is 100 volts. So, this is 100 volts. The power rating of the maximum capacity of the power rating of transformer is 100 kilowatts. Now for this particular induction motor, if I try to identify how much current drawn by this particular induction motor at this capacity of 100 kilowatts, can you able to calculate the current? Can you tell me? Right. Now as I said, induction motor is what kind of load? RL load. For RL load, what is the power factor I am going to get? Can I say power factor is 1 for RL load? No, right? So power factor is always lagging, and this will be varying in between 0 to 1, right? So when I am going to get 1 for pure resistive load, for pure inductive load I am going to get 0, but it is a RL load. The RL load means you are going to get above 0, less than 1, below 1. Are you following what I am saying? So let us assume that it is a inductive load with a power factor of, if I am calculating the resistance and inductance, and if I calculate the power factor, I am getting 0.8. Now my question is, can you tell me for this capacity of 100 kilowatts at a voltage of 1000, how much current drawn by the induction motor? Can you tell me? So what is the formula for active power, guys? VI cos phi. For this particular load, what is the value of cos phi? 0.8. Active power is 100 kilowatts. 100 into 10 cube. Voltage is 1000 into current, and power factor is how much? 0.8. So what is the current you are going to get? If you do the simplification, you will get 125 amperes approximately. You are going to get 125 amperes. Are you following what I am saying? So maybe it may be 125 100, right? So it is approximately you are going to get 125 amperes. That means for this particular load, I am saying that the current drawn by this particular load is 125. But what is the, as a designer, I know what is the current winding current carrying capacity of this winding? Only 100 amperes. As a designer, I know. But as a user, he doesn't know that what is the winding capacity. He simply understand this is 100 kilowatts at a voltage of 1000. So he has chosen the induction motor with a capacity of 100 kilowatts. If I apply his maximum load, then it is going to draw how much current? 125 amperes. So what will happen? Obviously 125 amperes is more than the rating of the winding of transformer or not. So obviously overheating of the winding will take in place. Copper losses are getting excess. Overheat is going to take, and at some point of time, if this winding crosses the melting point, then obviously the damage of transformer is going to occur. Are you following what I am conveying, guys? So that is the reason. For suppose, as if I am a good designer, and while designing and indicating on the nameplate details, if I mention instead of 100 kilowatts, if I mention simply this one as 100 kVA, then he will keep in mind that the induction motor, so I know the voltage 100 volts and I know the kVA, I will calculate the current. So I get the current as 100 amperes. So I will always keep in mind that I won't directly apply induction motor with this capacity of 100 kilowatts. I will always apply a capacity which is less than this 100 kilowatts, right? Where the mistake is happening? From the user side or from the designer side? From the designer side. What is the mistake that is happening? Instead of indicating on the nameplate details as apparent power, they mention as active power. So that is the reason the user doesn't know, doesn't aware of what is the current carrying capacity. Are you following what I am conveying, guys? If I mention the apparent power and for the given voltage, I can able to understand the current carrying capacity, and according to that, the user, okay, may apply the induction motor which is not going to excess or overheat the windings. So the conclusion is always, okay, on the nameplate details, the power rating is mentioned as apparent power, because the temperature rise inside the transformer depends purely upon the voltage and current and independent on the power factor. So that is the reason always the transformer rating will be mentioned as apparent power. It is mentioned as apparent power.